Hey everyone, this is Jimmy with Philosophy for Everyday Life. I am just working to get this live stream up and running. This is my first one, so running into a couple of technical difficulties. So I'm just going to check to see that I'm actually on here. All right, looks like we're good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. As I said, my name is Jimmy. This is Philosophy for Everyday Life, and this is Philosophy Hour. The idea for this live stream is just that I'm going to actually look at a philosophy text and stop and comment a little bit and just sort of see how it goes. If we have questions in the chat, I can respond to those. Still sort of getting a feel for how this works technically. This is the first philosophy essays that I ever read in the first philosophy class that I ever first encountered it. And it's been one that just kind of stuck in my mind and that I've returned to periodically. So what I like about this essay is that it addresses an experience I've had, which is a sense that life or the world or my life is kind of meaningless or doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's a feeling that I have encountered from time to time in my life. And it's hard to know what to do with that feeling. And Nagel offers one response. It's certainly not the only possible response, but he addresses that feeling and I think gives us some tools that can help us to think about it. So before I start reading, I'm just going to double check on to make sure everything's coming through here. It looks like it may be a little choppy or having trouble catching up. If you are watching this and are able to drop something in the chat to let me know, that would be wonderful. Just how it's whether it's actually coming through. Okay, well, I'm not sure whether this is working or not, but I'm going to go ahead and just and do a little reading. I have the text to my left here, so I'll be looking over to do that to read, and then I'll try to look back to the camera to comment. So this is The Absurd by Thomas Nagel. Most people feel on occasion that life is absurd, and some feel it vividly and continue. Reasons usually offered in defense of the inadequate. They could not really explain why life is absurd. Why then do they provide a natural expression for the sense that it is? So Nagel starts out with this experience. He says, but the reasons we give for this don't really make sense. So we have these reasons we offer. It's there, it's real, but the reasons are inadequate, he says. So that's the basic setup. So section 1, consider some examples. It is often remarked that nothing we do now will matter in a million years. But if that is true, then by the same token, nothing that will be the case in a million years matters now. In particular, it does not matter now that in a million years, nothing we do now will matter. Moreover, even if what we did now were going to matter in a million years, how could that keep our present concerns from being absurd? If their mattering now is not enough to accomplish that, how would it help if they mattered a million years from now? Whether what we do now will matter in a million years could make the crucial difference only if its mattering in a million years depended on its mattering period. But then, to deny that whatever happens now will matter in a million years is to beg the question against its mattering period. For in that sense, one cannot know that it will not matter in a million years, whether, for example, someone now is happy or miserable, without knowing that it does not matter, period. So this is one of these reasons. If you remember the setup, he said we have this experience or feeling of meaninglessness. But the reasons we use to explain the experience don't make sense. And so this is one of them. Nothing I do now will matter in a million years. So why does my life matter? And Nagel raises some questions about this. He says, well, does it matter now that in a million years we do that in a million years nothing we do now will matter? That is, so basically, so what? I mean, it's not going to matter in a million years, but does that matter for us now? Or even if it did matter in a million years, why would that lend it meaning now? So he's saying this million years, this sort of sense that there's a smallness in time to our experience, that it's insignificant in the scope of time. It's a reason we give for this feeling of meaninglessness or absurdity. But he says it doesn't actually make a lot of sense when you unpack it. He gives another similar example with space. He says, what we say to convey the absurdity of our lives often has to do with space or time. We are tiny specks in the infinite vastness of the universe. And Kevin Whalen, I see you. Thank you for that feedback. Lives are mere instants, even on a cosmic one. We will all be dead any minute. Facts can be what makes life absurd, if it is absurd. For suppose we lived forever. Would not a life that is absurd if it lasts 70 years be infinitely absurd if it lasted through eternity? And if our lives are absurd given our present size, why would they be any less absurd if we filled the universe? Either because we were larger or because the universe was smaller. Reflection on our minuteness and brevity appears to be intimately connected with the sense that life is meaningless. But it is not clear what the connection is. So we have this sense that our lives are mere instants. What if we lived forever? Would that change this sense? Would that somehow lend meaning to our lives? And he says, not necessarily. Why would our lives be less absurd if we filled the universe? I mean, you can imagine a very small universe that was limited to the size of my life. Just the fact of filling more or less space doesn't actually change this feeling of absurdity or meaninglessness. He gets a little more abstract and philosophical in this next argument, but we'll try to tackle it. He says, another inadequate argument is that because we are going to die, all chains of justification must leave off in midair. One studies and works to earn money, to pay for clothing, housing, entertainment, food, to sustain oneself from year to year, perhaps to support a family and pursue a career. But to what final end? All of it is an elaborate journey leading nowhere. One will also have some effect on other people's lives, but that simply reproduces the problem, for they will die too. So there's a sense of absurdity that we engage in these actions, but for what? there's this chain of actions that we follow, but why are we doing these things? Why are we, pursuing this career? Why are we building this family? Why are we getting this house? Why are we living this life? Nagel says there are several replies to this argument. First, has as its purpose some later member of the sequence. Chains of justification come repeatedly to an end within life. And whether the process as a whole can be justified has no bearing on the finality of these ends. To make it reasonable to take aspirin for a headache, attend an exhibit of the work of a painter one admires, or stop a child from putting a hand on a hot stove. No larger context or further purpose is needed to prevent these acts from being pointless. So Nagel says this worry about chains of justification, answering the why question, why do we do this, why do we do that? He says, actually, our activities can just be justified in themselves. It can just make sense to take an aspirin, or just to make sense to attend this art exhibit, or to stop this child from being hurt. We'll read the next 2 paragraphs. Even if someone wished to supply a further justification for pursuing all the things in life that are commonly regarded as self-justifying, that justification would have to end somewhere too. So even if we did have an ultimate why, you have to stop somewhere. If nothing can justify, unless it is justified in terms of something outside itself, which is also justified, then an infinite regress results, and no chain of justification can be complete. Moreover, if a finite chain of reasons cannot justify anything, what could be accomplished by an infinite chain, each link by itself? So he says, in answer to this why question, why am I doing this activity? At some point, you're just gonna have to say, this is the reason. There's because I want to right now, because I think this will make me happier in the context of my life, because I think this fits in with some larger purpose that I believe in. But at some point, you're gonna have to say, okay, and that's the last reason I give. There is no additional why. Since justifications must come to an end somewhere, nothing is gained by denying that they end where they appear to, within life, or by trying to subsume the multiple, often trivial, ordinary justifications of action under a single controlling life scheme. We can be satisfied more easily than that. In fact, through its misrepresentation of the process of justification, the argument makes a vacuous demand. It insists that the reasons available within life are incomplete, but suggests thereby that all reasons that come to an end are incomplete. This makes it impossible to supply any reasons at all. The standard arguments for absurdity appear, therefore, to fail as arguments. Yet, I believe they attempt to express something that is difficult to state, but fundamentally correct. So just to return to this third argument, he mentioned the one about nothing that matters, nothing that happens now. Space argument, our lives are so infinitesimally short in the scope of the time of the universe. That argument doesn't work. In this chain of justifications argument, doesn't work. And what he says is, in this, nothing is gained by denying that justifications end where they appear to within life. And the feeling that there must be some further reason actually undermines our ability to give any reasons at all, because it refuses to accept that stopping at this relatively arbitrary point in terms of why am I doing this, is valid. It says, no, there has to be some bigger picture. Now, we might want to disagree with Nagel. We might want to say at this point, well, there is something better, more satisfying about having a larger, more coherent picture about why life is meaningful, or about the reasons for our doing this live stream, because it makes sense within the context of the story of my life, as opposed to I just decided to do it just now, just because I felt like it. So maybe we want to say a better story, say about our lives or about the world. And I wonder if some of this sense of absurdity comes from the feeling that there's not a story that can be told. that there is no story. Even if that's true, even if there are better and worse reasons, I think Nagel does get us to some really interesting territory, thinking about this idea that chains of justification are going to end at some point. And we have to be okay with that. We have to be okay with saying to ourselves, this is as far as I go. This reason is good enough for me and for my life. So I'm not sure how the technical situation is right now. I do see that some people are coming in and out. I'm going to see if I can do just a quick technology check. Okay, so we are still running. If you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat or a comment. Would be very glad to hear from you. And I'll keep an eye on that as I go. So I'm going to take a stab at this second section. So far, Nagel has established that we have this experience of meaninglessness. Some people do, sometimes at least. But the reasons we give for it, he looks at 3 different reasons, don't make a lot of sense. So what else can we say? This is section 2. In ordinary life, a situation is absurd when it includes a conspicuous... So the stream quality is struggling a little bit here, but I'll press forward with this second section and then maybe call it a day for this first philosophy hour. So this is section 2. In ordinary life, a situation is absurd when it includes a conspicuous discrepancy between pretension or aspiration and reality. Someone gives a complicated speech in support of a motion that has already been passed. I think we're out again. No data. Okay, I think I'm back. Mark, thanks for the feedback. YouTube says the stream health is no data. Yeah, 6. No data. Friends, I think my software. It's not going to cooperate. Going to the stream here, but if you